Previously we broached the keyways into the end of these drive gears, and then we CNC machine the drive pulley. So now all we need is something to connect between the differential and the drive wheel.
So we're going to use a little bit of this hot rolled steel and turn up the two axles. Here's a quick overview of the axle. So this is a left hand shaft. So you see a number of features on there. So at this end, this is where it goes into the gear inside the differential. So there'll be a keyway on there. Then it opens out to a journal which goes on this bearing. Then it opens up again, and that's the bearings on these plumber's blocks here. Then it opens up again. This is where the disc brake will go. So there's a keyway on top here. Also, if you look at the drawing underneath, there's another keyway on the other side. So we'll have two keyways on the brake. Then it drops down again to another 17, which is another one of these bearings here. And then finally onto the drive flange at this end. So there's a keyway here and a keyway on the other side. So there'll be two keyways on the drive flange. And then that finishes off with an M10 by 1.5 thread. Put a nut on there and probably put a big washer on there as well. So I've got two of these to make. They're almost the same. The left and right hand are almost the same, but because the differential is offset, there's a little bit of difference just around here, but basically very similar. Right, let's go and make a start in the lathe.
So we're looking for about 16.98 to go into a 17mm bearing. Yep, that'll be fine.
Right, so that's the machining done on this side. Let's just check it all fits before we take it out of the chuck. So I made this off camera. This is the brake disc hub.
Luckily I was able to film all the off-camera work with my off-camera cam. Very handy.
Next on is the bearing. And then the differential unit and gear, drive gear. Okay, looks good. Okay, we take it out of the chuck, turn it round and do the other side. Okay, so we've got the part turned round, it's back in the forejaw, and we've pretty much centered it, maybe 0.01 out, but I think that'll be fine. And this mark here represents where we're now going to go down to turn the new journal and just turn the last part of this.
So here we're about to use a die to cut the 10mm thread. This is a pretty standard approach where you use the tailstock nose just to keep it square and keep the pressure on to get that thread started. Works really well. So on my right hand I'm continuing the pressure and advancing the tailstock, and then with my left I'm turning the chuck. Turns quite a nice thread if you use this method. If you're interested in thread turning the conventional way, single point threading, etc., if you check out a channel called Clough42, I'll put the link down in the description. He's currently building an electronic lead screw and he's about to sell a kit. It looks really interesting if you're into that kind of thing. Go and check that out.
Okay, I've just grabbed an M10 nut here. We'll just make sure it fits. Right. So I'll order up some nylock nuts for the final fit up, but this is just what I have to hand. Just check the thread. Okay. Okay. There we go. There's our left-hand drive shaft. So all the turning complete. Now we just need to machine in the keyways. Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, so here's the second shaft complete. So this is the part that goes into the bevel gear inside the diff. Then we've got our 16mm bearing in the diff. That's the journal for that. And finally it goes to 17, which is the bearing which holds it to the rear drive plate. Okay, let's take it out and see what we've got. Okay, here's our second drive shaft. Looking good.
So before we do the keyways in the shafts, I just wanted to do a dry assembly and make sure it's going to go together.
Okay, so the second shaft's machined. Let's see if it will go together. So I've got the first shaft built up. So first of all we need the bearing. These are still got to be finished off. That's the hub for the brake disc. That's on next, and then this outer bearing. Okay. Obviously, there's no keyways in these shafts yet. We're just doing a bit of a dry fit. We'll get this into the pinion, the bevel gear, and into the bearing at the end. Hopefully somewhere there. There we go. Okay, so there's our transmission nearly done. So this will have the drive hub on. We get to make that, and that held on with that nut there. We've got our bearing here, and that will be pressed up against this shoulder. This bearing here will be pressed up against that shoulder, so that will hold that shaft in space laterally, and that pushes up against the shoulder that holds the diff in place, and the same this side. So effectively these four bearings are used to hold that diff in place and stop it floating left to right. And then inside here we've got our bevel gears, not keywayed on yet, so they're not rotating. Does it rotate? Oh yeah. I think I need to play around with the engagement and the mesh to get that preload on there just right, and then I can lock them off with the grub screws, and then they'll be driven through the keyways. Okay. Right, speaking of keyways, they're next.
So rather than ruin those shafts I've just created, here's a scrap piece of mild steel. I just want to practice the keyway cutting in. So I produced the cam just for the basic slot, and this left about 0.1mm on the wall, and then I created a series of G-code programs which had progressively more and more radial cut in steps of 0.02. So essentially I could make that slot wider and wider and wider and creep up on the final dimension. So here we are machining out, also experimenting with speeds and feeds, so you might see that change slightly. Just see what works best. This is a 4mm end mill, by the way. Once I'd finished the machining of the basic slot, it was then time to try some of the 2D contour profiles out, just to see what kind of size I might need. So this was, I just tried 4.98mm, just to see what that would do. So the original slot was 4.9mm wide, and then this is the 4.98 2D contour. There we are, cleaning it up. Looks like a keyway. What we can really do with is some gauge blocks just to help us. Ah, that's handy.
Okay, so let's talk about this gauge block set that I was sent by Banggood. So it came fairly well wrapped in this thick cardboard box here, and then inside I've got this quite nice wooden box here, a nice clasp at the front, the single hinge along the back there instead of two separate hinges, but it works just as well. So one thing I noticed on it, you've got real wood around the side here, and this top looks a little bit unusual. You can probably see it's slightly yellow, and it's actually MDF with a laminate on top. I probably end up dyeing that so it stains it down to a nice even colour, but a pretty well made box all the same. So let's dive right in. Okay, so before we get into the detail of this review, I just want to make one thing absolutely clear. This set of gauge blocks was sent to me free of charge by Banggood to include a review, give my comments on, and show you guys what you're going to get for your money. Okay, so now we've got that out of the way, let's dive in and open the box and see what we got. Okay, so what we've got inside here, this is a 32-piece gauge block set. The grade of this is grade 0, so that's essentially like calibration grade. They do another grade, grade 1, which is a lesser grade, which is designed for general workshop use. The reason I went for the 0 was this would be up for sale for £63. The grade 1, which is slightly less accurate but perfectly good for workshop use, was 53 or something like that, so basically about £10 difference. And at those sort of prices I thought, well, I might as well go for the 0. So when you first look in these kits, it looks a little bit bewildering. There's lots of different numbers and it looks a little bit complicated. This was invented by a guy called Carl Johansson around 1896, or the concept was invented. I believe gauge blocks as such were around before then, but he invented the concept of being able to stack them up and to create various permutations. Be interesting if anyone knows how many combinations and permutations, whatever you can get out of these by, say, stacking up to 3 of these together. I imagine it's into the hundreds, maybe even 1,000 combinations. And the idea is you can stack and build up your main units and your sub-units and your hundredths and even down to thousandths of a millimetre there, and cover a wide range of potential gauge lengths, as they're called. So it's a very clever little kit. So you get the 50mm, 30, 20, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it goes in 0.1mm, so that's 1.9, 1.8, 1.7, and so on, all the way down to 1.1. And then you go all the way down to 1.01, so you're now in tenths of a millimetre, and then you've got 5/100ths of a millimetre right in this corner here. So you can see you can make up quite a wide range of combinations. We'll show you some of those in a little bit later. So that's what you're getting in the kit. In terms of the comes with a certificate of calibration. Slightly annoyingly, it's sort of laminated on sort of 2 halves, so I dare say I could make a smaller version and have it on one sheet, but this is what you're getting. So you've got all the nominal sizes down here, so it's 1.005 is this one. Has a unique identifier, I guess just in case that gets lost or you got multiple sets, you know this one comes from this set. Also tells you the deviation in microns, although I mean technically that's micrometers, but that gets confused with micrometers, so I know a lot of people don't like it, but the term micron has tended to stick. So this shows you the deviation from that nominal size. So this, we'll go into the detail of exactly how small that number is in a minute, but 0.2 microns is pretty small as a deviation. So we'll go down the list. We've got that one. On the other side we've got all the other tenths down here, and here's all their deviations. So if you just cast your eye down that, you're either getting 0, sometimes 0.1 microns under, and sometimes up to 0.35 over. So these range kind of dictate that it lies within a grade 0. So if you had grade 1, there'd be a slightly more relaxed tolerance and so on. So it works all the way up to, you got your 50mm block there, the reference number, and then the tolerance out here. So what we'll do next, we'll just kind of put those tolerance numbers into perspective compared to well, let's face it, what probably most of us are able to actually measure in our workshops, especially if it's just a home workshop, with a regular micrometer. So we'll have a look at that next. So in terms of the accuracy of these compared to the digital micrometer here, so this has a resolution of 0.001 millimeters. Now that's resolution, that's just what it will display on the screen. In terms of actual declared accuracy, now this is a relatively inexpensive digital micrometer. I don't send it off for calibration, but the declared accuracy of that is 0.002 millimeters. So that's as good a value that you can trust on that display. Although it will display down to 0.001, that's the accuracy down there. So that's in millimeters. If we then look at one of these typical gauge blocks, we're at 0.2 microns. Let's see for this bottom one down here for the 1.1. So yeah, so a deviation of 0.2 microns. Putting that 0.2 microns in the same unit, so we end up with 0.0002 millimeters, which is a factor of 10. So the deviation is 10 times lower than the accuracy that we can possibly measure down there. So anything we're going to do here right now with this equipment is just going to be limited by what we can measure here. But you know, we're in a home DIY workshop. Let's just have a look and see what measurements we get. We'll make a few stacks of these, check how they ring together, and then we'll make some stacks up that are close to the slot that we want to mill in the keyway. Just try out some width there and just see what readings we get there. So that's what we're going to do next. Let's prepare a few of these blocks. Actually, before we prepare some of these blocks, it'd be worth measuring the width of this keyway material, because that's what we're basically going to try and home in on with our keyway and make us a nice snug fit. Okay, so we've got 4.99 millimeters there. 4.99. See the other dimension. It's nominally 5 by 5. Okay, 4.8, 4.985. .98, 4.987. So somewhere between 4.8. Why do I keep saying that? Okay, so it's somewhere between 4.98 and 4.99. So just 1 to 200ths under 5 millimeters. Okay, so we need a keyway slot that's going to give us a nice snug fit on that. As it's a 5mm keyway, the first one we'll go for is the 5mm gauge block. Now I'm not going to go silly, but I'm just going to try not to handle them too much. I'm not sure we're going to be able to measure the expansion due to the heat in my hands, but we'll try and give them the fairest chance we can. So first thing is I'm just going to spray a little bit WD-40 just to clean them up, and make sure they are perfectly clean before we do the measurements. Actually, it's worth showing you them in detail. So the actual calibrated length is across there, and that's, you can see the label there, and then the there you go, label there, and then the reference number. So that's been machined, polished, and then lapped to that final dimension to get it to within tolerance. You can see as the dirt needs cleaning off there, but it looks quite shiny underneath. If we go to the other side, yeah, needs a bit of a clean, but it's pretty shiny. If you go to the other side, so the non-measurement sides, you can see where they've saved a little bit of money to make this a cheaper set. So there we go, get that in the light. Essentially it's just the machined finish. Well, it might have actually been ground. It's not been lapped. And then the same that side, and same on the ends, just the kind of the raw finish. But the critical dimension is the one we're after. So that's where they're saving a little bit of cost, but in terms of functionality, should be okay. So let's get this one cleaned up. So we've got a little bit of WD-40 here. You can get this in very like 5-litre cans. Works out quite economical, and then they come with this sprayer. So in the UK that's Screwfix. I'm sure there's equivalents around the world. Yeah, I'd say that needs a little bit of a clean. Okay, again, try not to touch it too much. There we go. It's cleaned up quite nicely. The other side. Okay, I'll just let that cool down just for a moment on there, and we'll just put it over here. We'll just prepare a couple more, ready to do a little bit of a stack up. Okay, so I've got my gauge blocks prepared now, cleaned up. So I've got my 5, 3, 2 and 1.9. I'll show you why I went for those in a moment and the stack ups we're going to make. Just before to do that, I noticed something really interesting. So these are sometimes called JoJo blocks because of the inventor, Carl Johansson. I just noticed this set is probably pretty valuable because it's actually been reported and inspected by, there we are, Joe, the man himself. Good to know. Probably worth a fair bit. Like a signature set, if you like. Although I think he died in 1940s, so maybe that's just a coincidence. Never mind, onwards. I'm trying to be brief so I don't handle it. So you're supposed to measure these at 5 places. It's relatively small compared to the anvil, so we'll see what we can do. Oh, there we are. So in the centre, it's 5. So the 5mm one has a deviation of minus 0.2 microns, so that's sort of the 4th, 5th decimal place. So it's way off the edge of what I can measure. So to 3 decimal places, it's 5. We'll just see if we can get that corner. Okay, in the corner it's 5. That corner it's 5. 5. And 5. So as close as I can measure with this. Again, not calibrated, but this is what I have. And this is what I used to make things with. I mean, that's a critical thing. Everything's made off this. It's 5. Okay. While we're here, we'll just check some of the other ones. So we'll check the 3mm one. Let's get it close. So this is 3. So again, 3 there. Let's try the corner. 3. 3. 3. And 3. Okay, so I've got a couple more out now. So let's try building a stack of 4.98 to fit our nominal 5mm keyway. So for that we'll need the 2, the 1.9 and the 1.08. So let's ring those all together. Yeah, that feels tight. And the 1.08.
So this is the 4.98mm stack, and as you can see that measured 4.98 on my micrometer, so pretty pleased with that. So I was given this free to review. Would I go out and buy this myself? Yeah, I think I would, because I think it's a pretty handy set to have around the workshop and pretty good value at £63 for what you're getting. It's a nice little 32-piece kit. Okay, onwards. Now I need to do the keyways.
Okay, we've got the actual part in now, so let's talk a little bit about the setup. So we've got our vice here, it's trammed in square. We've got our 2 V blocks holding our shaft in place. This is where the first keyway is going to go. There'll be 2 of these, so this is to drive the hub, which drives the wheel. There'll be one here and there'll be one back here. At the other end we've got this ER collet, this is the square one. We've got a jack underneath there just to hold that in place so it doesn't drop down. And we've got that currently square to the table. So the idea is that we can use that to index round 180 degrees and pick up off the slot on the other side. We can do that in a number of places, and then when we need to machine the slot this side, we'll flip it round and the collet block will hold this piece here, turned the other way. Okay, hope that made sense. So let's get ourselves lined up on here, on the center, and we'll start the first one. Let's just give this keyway a try and then just see where we need to go from there. That's a bit tight. Bit tight. Okay, we'll get the gauge blocks out and then see where to go from there. So we just machined what's nominally a 4.96mm wide keyway, and this is a 4.96mm stack. Let's see how close the CNC machine is. Oh, that's not bad. It's kind of just wanting to go in. So at 4.96 on the stack, that's almost, yeah, oh, it's gone in a little there. Right, let's drop this down slightly. Okay, now we've made up a stack of 4.95, so 0.01mm narrower. Oh yeah, that easily drops in. So it's probably 0.005 of a millimetre larger would probably give that a snug fit. So we're halfway, I'd say, between 4.95 and 4.96. Now on the CNC machine we asked for 4.96. That's pretty encouraging. That's not bad. Right, so based on that, let's open it up a little bit, because we're shooting for 4.98 to 4.99 to get a nice fit on the keyway. So effectively what I've done here, I've created a series of files, so they go from 1 to 12. The 4mm means they're just made with the 4mm end mill, and then right at the top there we've got 4.6, that's the roughing out, then there's a 4.8, 4.86, 4.88, and all the way down in steps of 0.02, and then we go in steps of 0.01, and then finally end up with 5.02, just in case I need to go a little bit larger. So each of those are just repeat G codes with a slightly different radial offset. Could have done this with the cutter compensation, but I just felt like doing it this way, and then once I've dialed in the exact width I need, it should be fairly straightforward just to rough it out, then go straight to the final cut, and then machine the rest of the keyways. So now we're going to run the 4.98 G code. Just open up that slot a little bit. Okay, this is a 4.98mm stack. Just see how we're doing. So we asked for a 4.98mm wide slot in the G code. This is a 4.9 stack, so wow, okay. Okay, I think we'll go with that. Okay, so we've done the first keyway, now we need to do the keyway on the other side, 180 degrees. So I've just set up this backstop here, so we've got a reference point to recenter the shaft here. And then because we've got this square collet block at the other end, I can now turn it around 180 degrees. So we're currently square there, and we're up against this, so we'll loosen it and spin it round. Okay, so that's all the keyways complete. So we've got 2 keyways at this end. So for the drive flange, the 2 keyways here. This is for the brake disc. And then we've got the keyway at this end that goes into the differential. So that's one of the drive shafts finished. While I was over at the machine and I had everything set up, I'll do the other one as well. So we've got 2 shafts complete, keyways complete. Let's see if it goes together. So here I'm just hand filing a small chamfer, just in case, because I think it's going to be quite tight to get the key in. So that chamfer will sit at the bottom, and then if I need to get it out, I can get maybe a screwdriver or some flat tool under there and just prise it out. Then it drops down again to 17, which is another one of these bearings. Try and do it without clashing.